I'm not going to lie to you guys, I liked one of this week's Amphibia episodes a lot more than the other one. Not to say that I think either of these was bad, just that one was kind of so average for Amphibia that at this point it makes it subpar compared to what we've been seeing. I was trying to think of a nice word for what I was trying to say. Subpar is not necessarily a nice word, but it's a fairly neutral one, I guess. But meanwhile, I feel like the other episode works as a perfect example of why I think Season 3 is working very well as a season of this show. The first of these two episodes, Hollywood Hop Pop, being the former of those two things. Like I said, I didn't hate this episode. I didn't think it was like a bad or unenjoyable or unwatchable episode of television or anything. But this episode felt so much like Amphibia by the numbers that I just had trouble getting into it. And maybe I just don't like hop pop heavy plots. And I actually have a theory as to why that is that I'll talk about after I talk about the episode, which isn't going to take very long. I don't have a lot to say about this one. But maybe I just don't like hop pop stories, and I've been thinking about that as I've been putting together what I want to say in this video. Because I can't remember the title of it, but there was that noir-styled one that featured him too that I didn't really get much out of. But this episode, it's... They more or less state the moral that he's going to have to learn. And then the instant that he runs into the human character who looks like the episode treats like the guy looks just like him. I didn't really think he looked that much like him, frankly, but you know, it's a stylistic thing, whatever. But as soon as he meets this character who everyone says looks so much like him, I knew exactly how the episode was going to end. Like, I knew what was going to happen. It felt super predictable to me. I knew that he was going to get the job in place of this guy, that we were going to have him become successful, that there was going to be some kind of chase. Thankfully, it at least involved Mr. X, so it was at least a little bit story relevant. And then I knew at the end he'd do the right thing, and he'd give the other guy all the fame that he had built up, because the moral was he shouldn't draw too much attention to his family in this time in their lives where that's a net negative for them. It was I should let my dream go, at least for now, in service of the other people in my life kind of message, which I do agree with. Like, when it becomes necessary to put your own wants aside for the greater good of the people you care about, I think it's a genuinely heroic thing to do that. In the very least, he's proven that he can become successful as an actor, which is something he's always dreamed of doing. But I've been thinking about it, and well, I don't hate Hop Pop's whole wanting to be an actor thing. Like, there was the episode where it really came into the forefront with like Acting Caravan or whatever it was. Again, I don't remember the title. I really should look up the titles of these things before I start making videos about it, but you know, that wouldn't be me anymore. But there is that one where I feel like they made pretty good use of it, but the more I think about it, the more I realize that I like Hop Pop as part of the ensemble, but not really on his own. And I think that's because what we got of Hop Pop on his own earlier on in the show was that mysterious figure who hid the box. It was kind of implied by that he knew more than he was letting on, that maybe he would have bits of scattered wisdom that might lead these characters to greater revelations than what he could provide over the course of the story. But he hasn't really been that person. And I feel like while I've still enjoyed the show a lot, and while I still like the character in most situations, I was disappointed enough by that I just have trouble getting into solo Hop Pop stories now. Like, I think that might be my one genuine criticism of this show. I kind of expected Hop Pop to know something about what was going to happen, like something about the greater lore of the world, that he just wasn't going to know all of it. That he was going to have to be like an integral part of the other characters piecing the lore together, because he at least knew snippets of it and could kind of lead them via breadcrumbs to new revelations and kind of vet whether those new revelations were actually valid. But he's just not that. In fact, I kind of get some of the criticism of his character from some members of the fan base, that he just kind of feels like another kid. He feels like another kid in the vein of like Sprig and Polly. That does kind of bum me out a little. But this was still an enjoyable episode. There were a lot of gags in here, for example, like poking fun at various like media enterprises and stuff. Like, it's the kind of thing that I know some people would like more than I did, but even I found it chuckle-worthy. So, like, it's not like there's nothing to like in here at all. It's just this one, it felt so archetypical of an Amphibia episode. It felt more like they were just going through the motions with this one. And it could just be, again, that I just don't vibe with these Hop Pop solo episodes. Like, that could be why I felt this way, but that's how it felt this way to me, and I have to be honest with you guys. The second of these two episodes, though, is, I think, emblematic of what is best about just the standard, like, quote-unquote fillery episodes of this season. This one's not filler, though. Like, the entire episode itself is not filler, because it is story relevant. There are definitely aspects of it that are. Like, you could swap out the story events in this one for story events in a different part of the storyline, and the rest of it would be filler, but the episode itself as a whole is not filler, unlike what some people have been saying. And in that way, it is emblematic of how Season 3 has been handling its more fillery episodes. We find out that Anne has been following up with the museum director lady, whose name I cannot remember. I just knew it, like literally just now. And now I don't remember. My brain, I remember every lyric to the theme song to the all but completely forgotten Nickelodeon show Space Cases that I watched like 24 times when I was a kid, but I cannot remember the name of this character, whose name I knew literally 2 minutes ago. But anyway, Anne has been following up with her, and who has been looking into research that might help Anne with finding a way to get the planters back home. So we do have confirmation that story stuff has been happening in the background. It's just not the kind of stuff that we need to check up on all the time. That would get redundant and boring. But in the meantime, while she does come to Anne with some research that might be promising, it's not super promising yet because they haven't really vetted it yet. But Anne is having trouble disappointing the planters right now because it has been quite a long time since they've had any noteworthy updates to this situation. So she goes ahead and takes them to the location where this research is being performed, and they meet the two researchers working on it. And one of them clearly comes off as being kind of sinister. The other does not, and I liked her a lot. She's voiced by the same person who played Sadie on Steven Universe, as well as several other animated characters. And I kind of half expected the episode to have her be the villainous one and the other one be not. The other one was Dr. Frakes, I think was her name. Like, I expected it so much, in fact, that I was actually kind of surprised when they just played it straight. And Dr. Frakes turned out to be the quote-unquote villain of this episode. Antagonist more than straight-up villain, but you get what I'm saying. She has managed to create a portal. In fact, she registered the energy that was produced from the box when the girls went through to Amphibia the first time, and has recreated it, and has learned to create portals with it. And we get an Easter egg here that confirms that the Owl House exists in the same multiverse as Amphibia, that this is either a parallel Earth to the Earth from the Owl House, or that this is the same Earth from the Owl House, which is very exciting for me. And now her greatest desire is to use this portal research to make a name for herself. So, when the planters accidentally expose their identities to her, as they have a couple of times now in the past and been accepted, she instead wants to dissect them, which is just gruesome enough to be funny, because they're like people, and then publish her research and become famous. And so Anne has to team up with her assistant to prevent that from happening. And there's some great jokes in here. Like, they weaponize some small kids, and they have like a zombie movie moment where all the kids swarm on the doctor lady. And then in the end, the assistant, who I don't think I've named her name was Terry, agrees to help Anne recreate the research and build a portal. And now we have an idea of how Anne and the planters are going to get back to Amphibia, which is very cool, which means Terry is going to be a recurring character, which is cool, because I liked her. Like, she was immediately a very likable person. She was kind of wry, but also kind, and was just so on board with helping immediately. Like, I kind of feel like I'd be like that in this situation, right? I kind of feel like I'd vibe with leaning that direction if I were put in her position. I don't know, she just felt very relatable for some reason. And in the end, Anne learns that she has to be straight with the planters even when she doesn't want to be. And the planters kind of admit that they were, taking advantage of the fact that they knew that she couldn't really let them down right now, that she was feeling like she couldn't really let them down, to kind of pressure her into doing stuff. And there's a cute moment where they do the same thing to Terry, but it seems like they're not going to do that anymore either. So, good lessons, but the lessons were not the focus of this episode. The sight gags were the focus of this episode, and the story stuff was the focus of the episode, the main focus of the episode. Making this a standard fillery-style Amphibia episode that not only had the kinds of bonkers humor in it that Amphibia is known for, with the, kids as zombies thing, it was very funny to me again. I enjoyed that a lot. Because his little kids, man, if you guys don't have little kids in your life, they're great, but they are a natural disaster, a force of nature. But all that was there. The message was there, as half tacked on as it was. But the story stuff was there, and that was the most important part of this. Dr. Frakes could have been literally any other Amphibia antagonist, and it was like a kids' museum or something. Could have been literally any other setting, and the kids could have been literally any other thing that the heroes could weaponize against her for a second to get away. And Terry could have just not been there at all, and Anne and the planters just escape on their own, and you still could have told effectively the same story with these characters with similar jokes and situations, but they stick the story stuff in here instead. They even tie it back to some stuff from earlier in the show, which I thought was super cool. And on top of that, the episode gets you wondering if this happened because of the girls going through to Amphibia. Did anything else happen? Did anything happen as a result of Anne coming back through? Now I'm curious about that too. In fact, I didn't mention it in the first part of the review, and I probably should have. The first of these two episodes got me wondering something too. Are there just doppelgangers of all the planters on Earth? And if so, does that mean there's a doppelganger of Anne somewhere in Amphibia that we never met? Is that what that episode was trying to imply, or was it just a gag? Point is, both of these episodes are good. One of them better than the other, I think, but that could just be my character bias showing through. But they're still both solid episodes of this show. They're not the most impactful episodes. Again, one of them is more so than the other. But they're still enjoyable. They're still together an enjoyable 22 minutes of television. And If You Give a Frog a Cookie, the second of the two episodes, does such a good job of typifying why I like Season 3 that I think this is now going to be my go-to example of a quote-unquote filler Amphibia episode that serves as a good example of what Amphibia Season 3 does right. I wouldn't say that either of these episodes, regardless of how much I liked or disliked either of them, blew me away in any substantial way, but I definitely had fun watching them, and that's what's most important. And by the end of this 22 minutes, the story was furthered, which is probably the next most important thing after that other one. As per usual, though, if you guys have seen the episodes Hollywood Hop Pop and If You Give a Frog a Cookie, what did you think of them? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below. And while you're down there, you might as well like the video, share it with anyone else you think would enjoy my content, subscribe if you haven't. You can also check out links to my various social medias, as well as many ways you can help out the channel. Those will be in the video description, but either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.